Hello, I'm making this video so that you understand how the product is working, and I thought that maybe a video would help in kind of showing the concepts of the product rather than breaking it down into modules and specific pieces of functionality. So I'm just here in Universe. I'm just going to log in, and then we'll start talking about what's actually going on. So this is version 5 of Version 1 CMS. CMS obviously stands for Content Management System, and that's what this system is really doing. It is managing content. It's not so much a website builder or an internet builder, although of course it's used for that. But it is a system for holding your content and manipulating your content, and that's essentially the two concepts of the system. There's storage and there's behavior. So when you put your content in, and that could be a page, a piece of text content, a blog, anything you can create in the system, you're creating it and you're storing it. So anytime we go into something and we create new, so for example, I'm going to create a new piece of text content. All I do is click the Create New button, I fill in the fields, I save it, or I publish it to whichever site it's eventually going to be on, website, internet, what have you. And it's done, it's stored. But it's not doing anything. I have to tell it how to behave. So when you're working with this system, after you've stored all your pieces of content, whatever type of content they may be, they're still not doing anything. You need to tell it how to act. And what you tell it in the back end governs how it's displayed in the front end. But we're not concerned with the front end today. That's for designers. Let them worry about how it's going to look. You're the content master. You tell the content how to behave. So we don't even really need a front end. Using what we know about the product, we can build an entire site in the back end without ever seeing what we're doing looks like. So we're not even going to bother with what it looks like right now. We're just going to talk about behavior. So I'm going to delete this new piece of content that I could create because I'm not really interested in it right now. Creating is easy. Storing is easy. It's behavior that is the real awesome functionality of the system. Now, when I say you're telling content how to behave, what essentially you're doing is creating relationships between your different pieces and types of content. Now, the most basic relationship you're going to create is to put a piece of content onto a page. That's how you get something to display in the front end. That's your most basic relationship. You could build a very simple site, creating pieces of text content, placing them on a page, and it would be done. You would have a website or an intranet full of pages that had some text on them. So we can do that right now. I've got my pages here in the website menu. When I create these pages, again, that's just storage. Okay? I need to put stuff on them for them to matter, otherwise they're just empty canvases. They're blank. They're waiting for me to fill them up with the stuff that end users really want to use. So if I've got, for example, a page that is going to hold information about our customers and work we've done with our customers, I might create a new page and call it case studies or news articles or what have you. So I'm creating my page here. I'm calling it news. System assigns the URL for me because pages are the things that have URLs, right? But I'm not going to worry about where it goes in the menu because I don't care about that at this point. And I'm not going to worry about what's on it right now. I'm just creating a blank page. So I save it, and I'm not going to publish it because we don't have a front end, but I could. I'm just going to save it as version right now. So there's my page. It's totally empty. It's waiting for me to fill it up with cool and useful content. So to create the relationship between the page and the content that's going to be on it, I just go into the Layout tab, which shows me a basic visual of all the different areas on my page where I can put content. The main area of the page is article content. So I'm going to create what's called in this system a placement. A placement is basically me putting a piece of content onto the page. So I'm going to add a new placement in this area. All of these things, I'm not too fussed about them right now. I just want to get that content onto the page, right? So I know what my piece of content is called. It's something to do with North Hertfordshire homes, right? So I start to search. There it is. It appears. I click it, and I save that placement. And now I've created the most basic piece of behavior in the system. I've put a piece of content onto a page. This is just one piece of content. It's just on one page. It's super simple. That's all I need to do. That page is ready to go. It's got stuff on it. Anyone who is an end user of the site could then go and look at it, and that's there. But that's kind of boring. And this is a news page, so I don't want just one news item on there. I want a whole list of news items that people can choose from and read. So I'm just going to go down and take this placement off. When I remove this piece of content from the page, it doesn't delete the piece of content. Remember, it's still stored in the system, ready to be used anywhere I like. I'm just going to take it off this particular page, so I'm going to break that relationship. And there we go. My page is empty again. My North Hertfordshire Homes story is still in there, but it's not on this page anymore. So again, it's just sitting in storage, waiting for me to tell it what to do. What I actually want to put into this page is a list of all of our different news stories about all of our different customers. So I need to create a list. The way I do that is go into content types and create a content list. This is the second most important relationship in the system. So the first most basic, creating a relationship between a piece of content and a page. The second most basic is creating a relationship between pieces of content of the same type, and that is what a content list does. So let's look at that now. So I'm creating a new list. Now remember, a content list basically aggregates pieces of content you've already stored. It's not really a thing on its own. It's just a tool that aggregates stuff. Okay? So my content list is going to be customer news. I can give it a description. Again, I'm not overly concerned about that right now, so just give it the same as the title. Now this is where I really tell it how to behave. List, this is what I want you to contain, right? I want you to contain objects from whatever site you're associated with. So the easiest way is current site, because what that means is when I put this content list onto a page, it'll pull stuff that is published to the site that page is on. Right? Pages are unique to sites. Page can only exist in one site. So when I say list, work with the current site, that's fine. It just means it's working with the site that it's been placed in. And this is where the real fun happens. List, what kind of content do I want you to pull together? Again, lists deal with content of the same type. They create relationships between contents of the same type. So I can create a list of documents, a list of events, and so on. But I know that all my news stories are text content, so I want to create the list of text content. Right? So it's just saying, look at items of this type. Okay? So now it knows, alright, I'm looking for pieces of text content. But I can get more specific than that. I don't want every piece of text content in the system in my list. I want certain pieces that are to do with customer news. Now, with every piece of text content, it has to have a type when I create it. And I can choose whatever types I want. I can create new types myself. But I've got one that I've already created in here. And you see, it's customer stories. So all of my news stories, my story about North Hertfordshire homes, those pieces of text content, I've given them the type customer stories. So now I'm telling the content list, look at pieces of text content and look specifically for ones that have the type customer stories. Now because this is news, because I want the most recent at the top of the list. So from the order by area here, I'm actually going to choose publish date. That'll put the most recent at the top of the list and the oldest down at the bottom. That makes it more relevant for the end user. They see stuff that is timely, rather than stuff that is a year or 2 years old. Now, I could stop there, But I know that I'm going to put this content list on the page I just created called News. And in order to get my content list to show up, I need to tell it, look, this is the page that you're going to be working with. So in this area, I find my page called News, and that's where I stick it. Okay, so this is the most basic kind of content list. Look at all the text content that is type news stories, and put them in order from newest to oldest. And I'm done. That's my list. I can publish it to the site. We don't have a front end, so I don't care about that right now. I'm just going to save it. Okay, so this again is just stored. Right? It's just a tool. It's aggregating the stuff that I've told it to aggregate. But in order for anyone to be able to see it, I need to go back to the most basic relationship we talked about, and I need to place it on a page. So I can go back to my page. It's here in my breadcrumb. And to place it on, I go back to my layout tab. Back to my article content, because it's the main part of the page. That's where I want my list to go. And I'm going to create a new placement. And again, all I need to do is tell the system what piece of content I want to go into this area. Last time it was text content, but we've just created a content list, so I need to change this. What do I want to go in here? Not a piece of text content, but a piece of content list that I have stored. Okay? So it knows which ones I've got. It's going to tell me, choose the content list you want here. And the one I've just created is called Customer News, so that's the one I'm going to put on. Okay. It allows me some other options as well. Okay. How many items do I want to show in the list? Well, I could show 5, and it would only show the most recent 5, but I want to show a bunch of them, so I'm going to change this to 20. If there aren't 20, it'll just show as many as there are. If there's more than 20, it'll just show the most recent 20. And I can decide whether I want it to show just the titles, in which case I would change this to mini, or if I wanted to show the title and the teaser, which is going to be large. And that's what I want it to show, so I'll leave it as large, and I'll save. Now, I don't need to see this page to know now that in the main part of my page, there is going to be a list of all of my customer news stories in order from most recent to oldest, and there's going to be 20 of them in a list on that page. So those are the two relationships that really matter in this system fundamentally. The relationship between the page and the content that's placed on it, and relationship between content of the same type, which is a content list. Now, there's a third kind of relationship here that is really important, and that's to do with categories. I might want to have on this page actually just the customer news items that are about the CMS. So we have customers who use SRM, who use Datafish, who use BPM, but I want this list just to be customers that are using the CMS. Okay? So we're going to go and look at a piece of customer news. Right, and it's the North Hertfordshire Homes one that I've just talked about. And I know that that has to do with the CMS because I created it and I told it, you are to do with the CMS. And that's done with categories, and I'll show you how. So in my quick search, I'm finding the North Hertfordshire Homes item, and I'm going to load it up in the Entity Viewer. Okay. I know that this is to do with the CMS because one of the categories that I've assigned to it is the CMS. First one, CMS Web. Okay? The reason why is because one of the cool things that they're doing with the CMS is they're one of our first version 5 customers. That's an important aspect of the news story because they're one of the customers that really helped us work out all the kinks, that really experimented with it. They really pushed it to see what it could do for them. So that aspect of it is a really important part of the news. That's why I've given it this category. Okay? There are other news stories that have similar reasons why I've attached this category to it. And a category is just a tag. I'm just saying this story has something to do with this particular topic. Now, the reason why categories are so cool in terms of content lists is because they allow me to filter that list down even further. So we'll go back to the content list, which is here in my breadcrumb, customer news. And if you recall, I've told it, list, I want you to show pieces of text content that have type customer news. But I'm actually now going to tell it, list, show me pieces of text content that have the type customer news, that have the category #1 CMS web. So I'm going to attach that category in the building of this list. There it is. I click on it, and I close that area. And now this content list will show pieces of text content that have type customer stories that have the category #1 CMS web, and it will only show those pieces of content. So I'm going to save what I've just done. And now I know that my list on my news page is going to show those customer stories that are to do with the CMS. I don't need to do anything else. The list is already placed on the page. I've edited it, but it doesn't matter. It will update itself on the page to reflect the change that I've just made. And I've made that change by using the categories. So categories are a really important way of further designating the topic that is in your content. And I can attach categories to any type of content in the system and filter my content lists, not just by the type, i.e. text content that's called customer stories, but also by the category, text content with type customer stories with the category #1 CMS web. So those are my three relationships, between the page and the content that's on it, between pieces of content of the same type, and filtered even further between pieces of content of the same type that have a particular category associated with them. Using these three tools, I can build my entire site. But we also have modules. And modules, again, just allow you to store and manipulate your pieces of content. Again, a piece of content created in a module can be placed on a page. Pieces of content created in a module can be linked to one another, either by type or by type and by category. So we'll take an example. We'll look at blogs. All right? A blog, again, is just another way of arranging content. So I'm going to create a new blog, and I'm going to call it Customer News. Okay? Given it the name, I can choose whether I want people to be able to comment on it. Right, so we've got those options. I'm just going to leave commenting off for now because, again, we don't have a front end, so nobody can leave a comment. I can decide how many posts I want to show on my blog page initially. So let's say 5. Do I want to show the full posts, or do I just want to show the teaser? We'll show the full ones, they're not that long. And I'm going to save this, and my blog is created. Now again, the blog is just stored in the system. I haven't placed it on a page, so no end user will be able to see it. It's just being held in here, ready for me to tell it what to do. Now, a blog is made up of blog posts. You can't have a blog without blog posts. So I've got this tab over here, blog posts. It doesn't have anything in it, because I haven't told the system, make this piece of content a blog post. A blog post, generally, is going to be some text. So what I need to do here is find some pieces of text content that I've stored in the system and tell them to be blog posts. So I'm going to create a relationship between this blog and a piece of text content, and it's going to make that piece of text content into a blog post. I've already got it in there. Again, we're going to use North Hertfordshire Homes as the example. And I can choose a date. It doesn't have to be the same as the published date of that piece of content, because blogs are timely things as well, so I can give it its own post date. We'll just call it the 1st of November. Right? and I'm going to save this relationship. So now my blog has a post on it. It's the story about North Hertfordshire Homes. Now, remember, North Hertfordshire Homes' story is just a piece of text content. I've already created a content list that it appears in, but it's not going to stop being in that content list just because I've also created a relationship between that story and this blog. It's going to appear in both places. Okay? So I've created that relationship, I'm done. What I need to do now is go back to the basic relationship and put this blog on a page. So we'll go back to the website area. We'll create a new page for it. We'll call it News Blog. Again, we're not overly concerned about where it goes in the menu at this point in time. So I've created my news blog page. Again, it's empty. It's waiting for me to put the blog on it. So I go back to article content, type blog. Which blog do I want? I can have lots. At the moment, I've only created the one, so I'll choose it and save. So now my customer news blog, with its blog posts, is showing up on this page, and I've got blog categories, blog archives, blog search also. This is the difference between doing your news as a content list and doing your news as a blog. Right? When I create a content list, all that list shows are the items in the list. But a blog, because it has these 3 extra parts to it, will also show all of the categories that are attached to those blog posts. It will show an archive month by month from most recent to oldest. So I'll see November 2012, October 2012, September 2012, and so on. And it will also give me the little blog search, so that I can search for various terms, keywords, what have you, in the blog without searching the entire site. So I've created a news page in 2 different ways. One, by creating a content list, filtered by type and by category, and placing it on a page. And 2, by creating a blog, adding my news story to the blog as a blog post, and placing the blog on a page. So I've done this in 2 different ways. Depending on how I want people to access older news stories is pretty much what would govern my decision about which way I wanted to do this. Right? But it's there, it's on the page, it's ready to go. So I just go back to my editor tab and I save. Now, anytime I edit that blog, anytime I edit that content list, it will automatically update itself anywhere it's placed on a page. If I create a new piece of text content that meets the criteria of the content list, it will automatically add itself to the content list. So those are the things that allow me to manipulate the content that I've stored in this system. When I create new and I put the content in, it just sits there. It doesn't do anything. But I'm the content master. I tell it how to behave, and I use tools like content lists and like the modules in the system to tell it how to arrange itself, what relationships to create between itself and other pieces of content, and where they're going to display on the page that I've placed them on. There's one more type of relationship which is also important, and it's to do with pages themselves. Now, if we go back and we remember, a page starts off empty. It's just a canvas for me to place other pieces of content on. But the way that you create relationships between pages is your navigation system. It's your menu system of your site. And that's what this is over here. This is my main menu of my website or my intranet. And the way that I arrange my pages in this menu will govern the basic hierarchical navigation of my site. So pages have a relationship with all the other types of content because you put the types of content on the pages. But the pages also have relationships with each other that are hierarchical. So these are all my top level items. If my site was designed such that I had a horizontal navigation at the top of the page, these are all the items you would see in them. But pages can have what's called children, which are other pages, and they come under that page in the hierarchy. So I can look at this menu, and anything that has this little arrow next to it tells me that that page has children, which are also pages. So if I click on here, I can see that the products page has pages that are children, such as this one, verse 1 ECM v5. This is a page in its own right, I can place stuff on it, but in the hierarchy of the menu, it is the child of the products page. Okay, so the pages have relationships with each other that are hierarchical, and the pages have relationships with all the other content, which are called placements. And all the other content I can create, I can store, I can place it on a page, and I can use things like content lists and categories and modules like blogs to create relationships between them. So when you're using the system, in the website area is where you have your page relationships. That's where you tell the system how to relate pages to other pages in a hierarchy. In your content types area, you have all of your different types of content, and this is where you store them. And these tools allow you to create the relationships between them. And once you've done that, you place them where you want them to go on a page, and then when you have a front end on your system, and your end users come and visit your website or your intranet, they will see those relationships laid out for them in the navigation and in the various page areas of the various pages. Those are the basic concepts of version 5. In 4.6, in 4.5, there was no distinction between the storage of content and the behavior of content. They were interlinked in such a way that when you created a page, not only was it storing the content of that page, it was automatically telling it how to display. The thing in versions 4.6 and 4.5 that are the closest to how version 5 works are placeholders. In the older versions of the system, placeholders were pieces of content that were stored and didn't show up anywhere on the site unless you placed them onto a page. This system is basically a system of placeholders. And the different thing about this one is that placeholders were just individual pieces of content that you placed individually. In this system, you can link them to one another and place them in lots of various different areas. You don't have to do it individually anymore. You can create relationships between those pieces of content and place them where you like. A lot of this whole system works very similarly to the way that the placeholders worked in the older versions. But this system has much more power because you can create relationships between all your pieces of content. You don't have to deal with them individually in the way that you used to do with those older systems. I hope that kind of helps you understand what are the basic ways in which the system works, the storage and the behavior, and the couple of types of relationship between pieces of content that we've just looked at. Basically, everything in the system works that way. So, you create a piece of content, it's stored, and then you tell it how to behave. Whether you're telling it to place itself on a page, put itself into a list, attach itself to a blog, attach itself to a forum. So, storage and behavior. And that's really all you need to know. I hope that's kind of shown you the basic way that everything works in the system.